It's time to dad.
Let me double check audio before we fuck that up again. Joe is 2, JT's 4, Nick is 5.
Are you able to do a virtual background on this thing or
Yeah.
not?
Yeah.
No.
Let me get out of the screen. If you do you see video settings?
Toggle the chat, audio, mute, camera, disable camera, share screen, share website, room settings, your audio and video.
No, it's not there. Do you see your little video?
It's not in video settings?
Let me...
No, that's good. Don't worry about it.
Hold on.
I want to take one video.
All right. Do you see what I'm seeing?
No, I do.
Do you see where it says video settings down here?
Yeah, click that.
Yeah. Okay. So once you click that, you should see all this stuff.
Yep, where'd it go on mine? Okay, so got that. Click that.
Go down to digital video effect.
Video.
See that?
Audio. No. Select them. Digital video effects. Got it. No effects applied. Yep, got it.
And then click virtual and then whatever you want. Blurred background. Yeah, there you go. Okay, sweet.
Perfect. There we go. Since we're going to talk about the hurricane. Water.
Cool. All right. I'm recording whenever we are ready. JT, talk real quick.
Check.
Okay. Yeah, you're good.
What's up, Time to Dad listeners? This is Time to Dad. We got JT, Joe, and Nick squared in the house tonight. Thankfully, we're all here. We're good on our Wi-Fi, safe from the hurricanes that we just saw across the country. But unfortunately, we know not everybody was. Some crazy times, but it's not the first time we've heard hurricanes coming in and wiping stuff out. But we hope that everybody's families are safe and all of that. But, we wanted to kind of touch on that a little bit, just kind of, and maybe any experiences that people have had with some hurricanes or disasters, storms, tornadoes. We're all in different parts of the country, right? We got people in Texas, Virginia, Florida. I'm out in New York. So we all experience different things and hear things and then think things are going to be bad, and then from the news, and then they end up being nothing, and sometimes they come out of nowhere and crush people. Like, I didn't even really know we were having a hurricane until this chat. Actually, with Nick, he was talking about it in our group chat. Yeah, I didn't even know something was coming, and this was a big one.
Yeah, to my own fault. Like I used to be petrified of weather as a kid. Like we had like a tri-level house, and anytime it would be any kind of like inclement. What are you doing with your video, JT? Keep switching.
I'm sorry.
But yeah, anytime we would have like any kind of mild to severe storm, I would like freak the fuck out and like try to get the whole family into like under the staircase was this like storage area. And storms used to petrify me, man. Like literally I would practically pee my pants. It'd scare me so bad. And now like as an adult, I nerd out on them and they like fascinate me. So every hurricane season,
This was in high school. You peed your pants on the stairs?
No, when I was a kid. It stopped scaring me at some point. I don't remember when that was, but I didn't really start kind of being fascinated by weather till, I don't know, maybe like 10 years ago or so. My wife will tell you, like, somebody was, I think she was talking to somebody at work and they were like, "Oh, are you going to watch the debate?" And my wife jokingly was like, "No, my husband's probably going to have it on the Weather Channel the whole night. Because I was tracking Helene. But every hurricane season, like that's my jam, dude. Like I track all the weather models, I track all the hurricanes. I'm in a bunch of weather forums, I'm in a bunch of weather chats with a bunch of other weather nerds, and we just fucking talk about weather. But every now and again, there's a storm that just kind of oddly catches my eye, and this was one of them when the models first like started even hinting at a storm, and it was, I mean, it was nothing at first, but for whatever reason, I was like, man, I don't have a great feeling about this storm, and then it turned into this fucking monster of a hurricane.
Interesting, like that you have like an interest for it. Like that's like never something I ever like thought of. You know, like growing up, we used to actually we still do. We make fun of my dad because like the first question he'll always ask wherever they ever came from out of state. Like let's say somebody drove from New Jersey to New York, he would always ask, "How was the traffic, and what was the weather like?"
Yeah,
there's really not much of a change of weather from New Jersey to New York, or but like it was always a question. It was, I guess, when he was in sales and small talk, you could always talk about the weather, so that's what he always did.
Yeah.
You know, like so
I mean, I try. Like my family jokes, like we had a really bad storm. Shit, it was Emerson had just been born. I don't even think he was a year old yet. But it was when Hurricane Michael came through here, and if you guys remember Hurricane Michael, it actually came up through Mexico City Beach in Florida, and it was one of those storms where they legitimately fucked up, right? It was supposed to be a little dinker that was going to come in, typical Florida hurricane, and it turned into this massive Category 4. I think it finally got upgraded to a 5 after they, analyzed all the data from the storm. But that storm came in through Florida. And when it finally, the tropical depression made its way up through Virginia, it spawned 10 tornadoes in Henrico County where I live within the period of like 2 hours. And that was some scary ass shit. And I think it went on to do some crap up in Northern Virginia towards you, Nick. But that's the funny part about big storms like that is, I mean, we are thousands of miles away from where it makes landfall, but the aftermath of it can still wreak havoc. And people think, I'm nowhere in the path of this. I don't have to worry about it. And then something like that happens. But that's kind of what fascinates me about weather. And part of it's just my own curiosity as a human being to want to try and understand and follow what's happening. And then the other part is just me wanting to be prepared and informed and able to make my own decisions about shit.
Were you like found like because you knew it was hitting Florida, but did you like kind of know? Like I had no idea it was hitting other places. That's Florida. Like,
well, that's the thing. The more you know about it, and the more. So, are you? If you don't, I don't want to say like an avid weather. I don't know what to call it, but if weather doesn't interest you and you're not trying to understand it and follow it from like a meteorologist perspective almost, then all you see is what the National Hurricane Center tells you. And even them, if you don't know what you're looking for, all you see is the cone, right? And you can kind of say, okay, well, if I'm here, I'm going to get a little rain. But if you don't know where to find the detailed updates, that all the data was there, right? So these people all throughout Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia, the data is there. You just had to know how to find it. And that's kind of the fault of media not getting it out there. Some media outlets are very information forward and follow exactly what the NHC is telling people and give people resources, and other ones just want to up how many people are viewing their station, right? And that's part of the problem. And that's another point of this is people realize now that weather is a huge thing, and you can get a lot of views and a lot of clicks by fear mongering with weather. So after Helene came through and did her business and wrecked everywhere, you start seeing all these, and maybe it was just me because I do a lot of weather stuff anyway, but you start seeing all these posts that are from TikTok. Of course, there's no timestamp to know when the hell it was posted, but they're posting these runs of hurricane models where it looks like another Cat 5 has come to Florida, which there is another storm brewing down there, but at this point in time, it's not really noteworthy. It's not anything that's going to be of a significant threat. but people have started using and realizing that it's clickbait. And so now they're starting to use stuff like the hurricane models and old footage, and that's just the nature of the internet, right? And we've been told that since the internet came around when we were kids, that you can't believe everything you read on the internet. The problem is most people either never were taught that or just forgot all about the fact that anybody can post whatever the hell they want on the internet, whether it's fact or fiction. And so that kind of shit pisses me off. And there was a lot of people posting footage of from when Katrina came down into Louisiana and passing it off as if it was, just outside of Tennessee or somewhere in South Carolina, North Carolina. And so that kind of stuff annoys me. And they, I mean, I even saw videos of old storm footage from old hurricanes and old flooding where people were trying to claim that their house was in this chaos and that they were looking for donations. And, there's people out there just sending them money. Yeah. And it's unfortunate that people use events like that to, for their own personal gain and for malicious means. But that the storm, like I said, it caught my eye, and it was a fucking hellacious storm. And the other piece to that is you've got the people out there that are just going to say, rah, 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 global warming. And my main argument to that is weather has always done this. It just has not been so well documented. We didn't have the tools and resources. The models were nowhere near capable of creating data points that can be used to warn people. And so that's kind of like the other thing that fascinates me about weather, I guess. Yeah.
Well, and news, I mean, I guess too, right? Like 20 years ago, if you didn't read the newspaper, you might have not read, like we all hear about it.
Even 20 years ago, if you were far enough away, you still weren't going to hear about it. Just because it wasn't relevant to where you live at all. But that's kind of the beauty and the downfall of social media is anyone can share anything from anywhere.
Well, actually, you mentioned like people doing the GoFundMe's, and I had somebody in Texas that we kind of knew through a client's cousin or something like that, and they posted and he sent it out or something. And I remember I donated money, and then like months later, I got like an email and a refund from GoFundMe because the person completely made it up, and they caught her. She was
that's good.
Yeah. So I remember getting the refund. I'm like, what the heck is this for? And then it was like, suspicious or not real activity or something like that.
Yeah, but that's interesting. You talk about donating because I saw your post there, not to put you on blast, but basically where you were saying, American dollars should be going to fixing these problems before another penny goes elsewhere to support anybody else, right? And I know we don't get political on this show, and I don't think that's political at all. I think that's just common fucking sense.
I think that's just American.
If our people are in need and there's a disaster like this, that should be pretty. That should be the go-to decision, right? And unfortunately, I don't think it is. And I don't know everything about the relief efforts that are going on. I know the military has stepped in to help with a lot of stuff. I know the Red Cross is obviously helping out. There's a lot of volunteer programs. But this is not an overnight fix. I mean, it's that is a very wide swath of the eastern United States that is devastated. Some of those communities I don't even think will ever rebuild because they're so small. If you want a really interesting rabbit hole to go down, I know Jason's not here. He's our rabbit hole guru. But there's people claiming that the same people that claim there's weather weapons out there claiming that you should take a look at the amount of lithium contained under the states that it went through. If you really want to go down a wormhole.
Whoa.
Yeah. But again, that could be clickbait. I'm not a wormhole guy, so I'm not even going to try to humor it. But that's people are saying that the lithium content in those areas is an interesting correlation to entire
Well,
towns and cities getting wiped out.
well, I can't say how much of that plays any relevance to those towns getting wiped out, but there is there is actual uh, I've actually read a lot of reports on, like, say, solar panels that that need to be replaced, and they get they get disposed and taken to landfills. There's a lot of materials that's in those solar panels that winds up getting into the ground and then affecting groundwater at some point. So it's not completely outside of the realm of possibility. I can't say indefinitely the likelihood of it, but the possibility is not zero. So I can't really speak to that, but I know, like in Texas, the further west you go, you're going to see more uh, uh, wind turbines and more solar panels and everything along those lines. Um, I can't say, I can't recall the last time that too many folks in West Texas were affected by any hurricanes or bad storms. Uh, I myself don't have any actual experience with hurricanes to the sense that, of my area being affected. Um, More commonly, it's tornadoes that affect the area in which I live. I've got some previous experience with a lot of relief efforts. Of course, I was a part of a military response that got sent to Louisiana for Katrina. Um, I also did a volunteer effort for Hurricane Harvey. I want to say it was the one back in 2017, 2018, somewhere around there. Whenever Houston even got flooded. So I took my boat down there and we helped evacuate people. So I've got a little bit of experience in relief efforts and rescues. I know back when Harvey hit Rockport and like Port Aransas, even 3 years after the hurricane, I myself had work because I was reframing condos and all these other structures and everything along those lines. And that was 3 or 4 years after the fact. One of the reasons why I refuse to live on the coast is because, it's just something that's a common occurrence. It's just another Tuesday for some people. They just deal with it as it comes.
Well,
But,
that's a huge problem.
4 years after a hurricane hits, you're still doing the work to try and repair from the last hurricane. Yeah. And then you've got another hurricane getting ready to blow through. It sounds like it's a battle that you're never going to win. I mean, Mother Nature will always win.
That's always the thing you see people talk about, right? Is like they're telling you to evacuate, get out. And some of those people you've got, there's a bunch of different categories, right? You have people that physically cannot leave, whether they don't have the means, they don't have a car, they don't have a place to go, they can't afford to go somewhere. You've got the people that just refuse to leave everything they've known behind. And then I think you've got the other category of people, like you said, where it's just another day in Florida or wherever it'll be. But I don't think when you get a storm like this, people just don't realize, like 20 foot of storm surge was the last NHC advisory for. Oh shit! Where did it make landfall? Petery or something like that. But 20 foot of storm surge where it made landfall, and like, can you imagine 20 feet of water? Where you're standing right now. And finally, the media, I think, realized people weren't taking this one seriously, and they started calling the storm surge unsurvivable. A lot of the news media outlets, and for me, when I've never seen unsurvivable used in any form of storm coverage for a hurricane.
That seems pretty extreme.
Yeah.
So was this kind of like, was this noted bigger than like Katrina?
So that's the thing is each storm is a little bit different, right? And each one's just an unpredictable. Listen, you can have 20 models running the data, and if you look at the spaghetti models, which if you've ever seen one, it's just the little strings that are basically pathways that these weather models are saying the storm could go. And usually the closer it gets to landfall, the tighter the strings get, and they get kind of uniform and they come to some sort of consensus. But you still have these crazy outliers in the models where it'll do weird stuff, and it's freaking weather, right? All these models are just a tool so that they can try to predict what is going to happen as accurately as possible. But not every Cat 5 hurricane is going to be the same, right? You've got, like, this was a big fucking system, very widespread. And that's why the rain and flooding was so bad, because 2 days before this storm even landed, you had the huge rain front come through the Northeast, but you also had rain from Helene was already well up into South Carolina before it even made landfall. But then you could have a Category 5 hurricane that's a tight-knit little ball that's not going to dump all this rain, and the main threat is just going to be wind at landfall, and high winds after. It varies storm by storm, and that kind of goes back to the NHC is very good at the National Hurricane Center is very good at what they do, I think. But I think some people just look at the cone and they're like, oh, we're fine. And part of that, I think, is just people aren't educated about where the information is. And then the other part is, I think, is that local media stations just are fear mongering and not really, they're not really providing details. They're just talking about how massive the storm is.
Yeah.
But so an interesting part of that is, what comes out of these hurricanes always, the hurricane happens, there's the devastation, and then there's who's at fault? Who's paying? Who's to blame? Right. Why isn't this person doing enough? Which is always the most interesting part to me from I guess probably from the lawyer's perspective, but just who should bear the liability of it. Mm-hmm. Insurance, when it was first invented, was never supposed to be a nationwide, everybody has insurance thing, right? It's not designed. It's not capable of supporting everyone having insurance. But then, in the 50s, but really in the 80s, when the mortgage took off, insurance also took off, because insurance is not really there to protect you. It's there to protect other people's money most of the time.
Nope.
Right? You're there. The insurance is to protect the mortgage companies, protect the financial investment in the property. And so, you have this insurance has almost become another tax on the American people, because everybody has it. And when these big disasters come through, everybody's rates go up. Flood insurance rates are insane in Florida. Yeah. I mean, my parents moved out of Florida because the flood insurance rates got so insanely.
A lot of states, Virginia being one of them, though, they cannot raise it due to a natural disaster. But Florida is not one who participates in that, obviously.
Right, and then everybody hates insurance companies. The general and lawyer joke is, the last person you ever want to be is representing an insurance company, because you're probably going to lose, because everybody hates insurance companies. And nobody likes them, but also at the same time, for them, there's not really a lot else they can do. They only have so much money, and that's the monthly premium, times over. And so everybody gets angry when these hurricanes come through, and it's the government's fault, it's the insurance company's fault, they're not paying out on this. And I don't know, we've kind of created a reliant society, where if something goes wrong, it's somebody else who needs to fix it. Mm-hmm. When in reality, shit happens, and that's awful. And nobody's excited or happy that a hurricane came through, but at the end of the day, sometimes shit happens, and we have this insurance process that's supposed to fix it. But if you didn't have flood insurance and your home was damaged by this flood, the insurance company is probably not going to pay it out.
Yeah.
because you don't have flood coverage, right? And if there's wind damage, things like that, they probably will have that in the standard insurance policy, but not flood. That's almost always exempted unless you have your own flood policy. And I know that that's going to create, once this starts, it's going to create a news cycle about, well, whether insurance companies should make exceptions and grant the flood thing. From my perspective,
isn't FEMA the only one that can provide that insurance? I think.
No.
Flood insurance? Is there private flood insurance too?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, FEMA declares things flood areas, right?
Yeah.
And insurance companies insurance policies do usually have 100-year flood coverage, right? Like just there's no way that this is ever going to happen in the next 100 years kind of flood coverage.
Yep.
And then there's going to be a nice legal battle over whether or not this was a 100-year flood, which is going to take 3 years, and that's
Yeah,
the argument comes in, right? Like, right, Nick was saying. So there was a post that I shared, and it was kind of going that, like, before we send money out, more money to Ukraine or more money here, let's fix the problem, because obviously we can print money and send it places. So if the insurance companies can't pay it out, because like you're saying, like, they don't want a hurricane either, because they got to now pay out hundreds of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of dollars. They might not have that money in house, right? No matter how big the insurance company is, right? That's a lot of money they weren't expecting just because there was some storm. And that's, I guess, where you would say, hey, well, that's where you'd hope, instead of sending $80 billion somewhere, where we could fix our infrastructure for a few billion, right?
Oh, yeah.
And
I mean, even if they're not going to replace the houses, I mean, that can go towards temporary housing while communities rebuild. Obviously, all you see when something like this happens is donate to the Red Cross, right? And all these celebrities telling you to donate. The U.S. has more than enough money if we can send what we're sending elsewhere to. I'm not saying to rebuild everybody's houses. I think that's a little far fetched. But they definitely have the resources to provide support to get the communities, a stable living situation while they rebuild. I still think it's on the home owner or property owner, what have you, to rebuild. I don't know that the U.S. should foot that bill, but yeah, all the relief and resources that money could go to, I think, would be crazy beneficial. The crazy part with this storm is, did you see any videos of when the floodwater started coming down? I've never seen
the flash flooding.
Yeah, I've never seen a wall of water move so fast. And a lot of the scrutiny that I saw was like, well, you knew the flooding was going to be bad. Why the hell didn't you get out? And people were in the process of leaving and just got cut off or had no choice but to stay. I mean,
there was talk about there was a lot of delayed notifications.
Well, for the dams and things like that, I heard there were some hiccups and things. But I mean, that's the thing. Like when somebody tells you there's going to be a 20-foot wall of water potential at the ground fall of this hurricane, like that's measurable, right? You understand that. You can look at the roof line of your house and be like, oh shit, well, my house is 20 feet tall. I got to get the fuck out of here because water's going to be over my house. But the places where it was going to rain, they said, oh, you're going to get 42 inches of rain. Well, what the fuck does that mean? If I told you
that
you're going to get 40...
That equates to nearly 4 feet. And I have seen vehicles swept away in less than 4 feet.
And that's the problem. To the average person, you're like, wow, that's a shit ton of rain. But it doesn't
you don't even understand what that means. Is that over 5 hours? Is that 40
exactly?
Inches?
It does not tell you that you're going to be fighting for your life on the roof of your house or floating down a flooded river in your car. I just think the ball was really dropped on how that information was delivered to people. I mean, I know they use the word catastrophic a lot, but I mean, to me, that just, yes, it was catastrophic, but when I'm trying to tell people like you need to get the hell out of here now, I
That's
feel
what
like
they need to
catastrophic
say. They need
did
to
not
say
do it
that. Like,
justice.
if you live here, get the F out.
Well, they do,
Well-
and that goes back to what I was saying earlier. Is you've got the people that physically can't or don't have the means to. You've got people that refuse to uproot and just leave everything they've ever known behind, and then you've just got the people that say we've been through it before, we'll be fine. It's
Well-
just, you're always going to have those people, I think.
Well, see,
And inundated too, right? And that's one of the other things. I don't know about you, Nick. You don't live too far south of me, so I assume you get the same things. But every time it rains, I swear to God, I get a flash flood warning.
Yeah.
Right. It's like it could be a flash flood.
Because normal happenstance.
Right. And I'm like, how am I supposed to determine which flash flood is actually going to be a flash flood versus which one is just it rained on Tuesday?
Yeah, there's a couple inches of water in the street that's not normally there. Yeah.
Right.
I totally get that.
I think your best response to that, though, regardless of, if it actually is a flash flood, it's just your level of preparedness. You know, it's better to have certain things and not need it than need it and not have it. So it's always good to,
Well, that's the thing, though.
just
If you're not expecting, you're not expecting your house, though, to just slide off the foundation and all of a sudden it's flowing down the river.
Well, that's an extreme. That's an extreme, yes. But I mean, even then, it's like, I don't know. There's certain things, that we as men and fathers and husbands can do to just try and, let our families know, while the likelihood of it's not significant, it's not zero. The possibility is very real. Where you can have five flash flood warnings. 4 of those may be nothing, that results in anything catastrophic, but then that one could do a lot of damage. So you just got to prepare, pray for the best, but expect the worst, So that's just the way I look at it.
In that one chat I'm in, I actually stumbled across it because it was, I don't remember how, many years ago, I searched for like hurricane chat, and it was, it used to be, Fox 13 out of Tampa, I think it was, had a little chat box on the side of their homepage. And so for the longest time, they hosted that. And I mean, people would come from all over when a hurricane would come, and they'd all ask questions, do I need to leave? And our general responses to the people that followed it a lot were, you need to heed what the NHC and your local authorities are telling you need to do. But I would just always tell people, if you're even, asking the question, do I need to get out of here because you're concerned? My answer is always go. Yeah. Like, if you're even thinking that you might need to go, then go, because you're never going to regret going and then nothing happening. But you could also end up not living to be able to regret whatever decision you did or didn't make. And I just tell you, as a human being, when something is just extremely uncomfortable and worrisome. And if you're at that friggin' point when you get a notification that something like this weather system is coming your way, just go with your fucking gut. So what, you're gonna lose $150 in gas to get out of the path of it, and you're gonna lose a few $100s for a couple nights in a hotel till it passes. Mm-hmm. But you don't get stuck in this situation like a lot of these people did. You never put yourself in that situation to begin with. Could it amount to nothing and nothing happened where you were? Sure. But I just that you should never gamble that. And I think that's the biggest thing is that the government bodies in place in these areas need to, I'm not saying they need to enact martial law and just start knocking on doors and kicking people out. But I mean, what the hell do you do when people aren't listening?
Well, so I will say that a lot of people also just shrug off media because, media, a lot of people just don't trust media anymore. Not going to go into the reasons why. Nobody here lives under a rock, so we know why. But nobody really trusts a whole lot of media. I think it's always best, to watch your local news first. A lot of people don't. They'll just watch national news and just watch national stories. But if you really want to know what's up, pay attention to your local news. I tend to trust local news far greater than I would the national news. But no, I mean, I'd rather be out of pocket $300-400 than possibly suffer the losses that could be far greater if I just ignored said warning. So if you've got that gut feeling that something might get hanky, you just better especially if you got a family, get the hell out.
Yeah.
What do you stand to lose besides $400?
Well, it's like Atlanta, right? I don't know how many hundreds of miles that is away from the coast, but before Helene made landfall, it was predicted to still be a Category 1 hurricane when it passed over Atlanta. And everybody in Atlanta is like, I don't live on the coast because I don't want to deal with hurricanes. But the reality is that system was so strong and trucking so fast that it had no time to dissipate. So that's also why you had all of Georgia, South Carolina getting wrecked, because it practically was a weak Hurricane 1 when it came rolling over those areas. And they don't have the building codes for that. Florida has excellent building codes if it's a recently built, structure. And there's a reason they have good building codes. Doesn't mean it's going to, get you through a Category 5 hurricane, but it's definitely a robust building code for that kind of crap. Some of these little towns that all that flood and the wind and the trees coming down, I mean, some of those houses are from, I don't even know when, but those houses are hundreds of years old, and they're definitely not built for that kind of weather.
Right.
It's a good point though about building codes, because you see it, even if you don't see it here as much, you'll see a volcano, a earthquake in Los Angeles, right? And maybe one building got damaged or something like that. But then you had that earthquake in Turkey where it was hundreds of thousands of people died and the entire city was wiped off the map by an earthquake, right? And a lot of that is, poverty driven, right? Like we have regulations and standards here in the United States that we have to abide by in building our structures. And to your point, in North Carolina, right, you're not planning on hurricanes, right? Mm-hmm. Or if you are, they're not going to be that big of a deal, because by the time it gets to you, it's not. We don't get a lot of, just the way the currents move and the air moves. You don't get a lot of direct hits in North Carolina. So your stuff is built to withstand termites. It's built to withstand living in the forest. It's built to withstand general coastal middle America. Whereas to your point, in Florida, when I used to live in Florida, right, you had to go through and you had to make sure that your trusses and your roof were designed in a certain way in order to meet your insurance standards, because they had to be nailed in a certain way because you don't want your roof to blow off. And so I hear you, JT, on like the small things you can do, but certain times stuff just gets out of your control, and where you live is just not designed for the reality of just sometimes things go haywire. That sometimes a hurricane comes to where you don't expect a hurricane to be, or the earth beneath you decides to just shake and open up. And it's a crazy thing, and it's something I think we take for granted a lot of the time.
Well, that's what's fascinating about weather. I mean, it's people on the forums all the time. You hear people say, tell people to stop wish casting because it's supposed to be a Cat 2 hurricane, and people are predicting in the forums that it's going to jump up to a 4 or a 5, and by wish casting, they basically mean like, oh, you just want to see like mass devastation and shit like that. And that's not really the case. I mean, it's generally people just kind of forming their own opinion about the storm. I mean, I don't know any human being in their right mind that would just wish any of this kind of devastation on anybody. I'm sure there's somebody out there, but sick individuals. Yeah. But that's the thing about weather, man, is it's just fucking weather. And you can have the best models, the best prediction systems, the best warning systems. And at the end of the day, Mother Nature is going to do what Mother Nature is going to do.
Who names it? How did they name the hurricanes again?
I don't know how they pick the name, but they start with an alphabetical list, and they just kind of go through that list. And
there's no way we got through Z and we're back to H. Like,
huh? No, we're going up the alphabet still.
Well, so back to your point, Nick. No, so whenever Nick with the C. Back to your point about a lot of homes aren't necessarily built in a certain way or anything along those lines. I fully understand that. Like typically, Northeast Texas, where I'm located, people don't typically prepare for floods. They don't think to go and get flood insurance. And people here have learned the hard way that the possibility is not zero. So whenever I say prepare, I'm not necessarily, talking about things you have no control over, like, just completely doing an overhaul of your home. I'm talking about a plan for you, yourself, and your family, and how you react to it to, control, the losses that can be mitigated. If a flood's coming, or even suspect it, I'm talking about you and your family just getting the hell out of there. That's more or less what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about you trying to board up all your windows and reinforce your home and things along those lines. I can tell you here in East Texas, we had the big tropical depression here in Texas a few months back. I live in Northeast Texas, mind you. All the rain and the wind that came from that big tropical depression, it hit us. So I'm a volunteer firefighter. We at the volunteer firefighter fire department were literally going for 2 days straight, responding to utility emergencies, traffic, motor vehicle accidents due to straight winds, people hydroplaning, trees being just felled in the middle of the road. We were out in the middle of the road at 3:00 in the morning, cutting trees so that they could be moved from the roadways. So I will not dare say that even someone like myself is not affected by hurricanes. I'm just saying that, it's minimal, but even then you yourself just need to have your own response plan for something that you can mitigate.
Funny you brought that up. And it only sparked my memory because you started talking about firefighting and first responders. There's going to be some interesting data that's going to come out of this storm about EV vehicle fires. A lot of those coastal areas have garages, right? You pull your car in when shit's headed your way and you leave it there. And so what happened? Everybody's pulling their Tesla into the garage and left it. And when the garage flooded, lithium doesn't play nice with water. And a lot of those fires you were seeing, they're not electrical fires from houses shorting out or utility. They were fires from EV vehicles burning hundreds of houses down. So that's another one of those just unknown things you don't think about and you don't know. And a Tesla's not going to say, "Hey, don't drive this into a flood. It's going to catch on fire." You just don't know, and you try to do the right thing to protect your valuables, and then something like that happens. Because I thought it was just fires from general storm damage, right? Like down power lines catching shit on fire and things like that. But then when you got down to the local news report level, it was EV vehicles that were causing the fires and setting homes ablaze.
Do you want to know our typical response whenever we have a vehicle fire on the side of the road?
Let it burn to the ground.
We let the son bitch burn. Because
even chemicals won't put that shit out.
Foam, the spray foam that we would typically use, it's only effective, depending on the size of the fire, assuming that you have a fully involved vehicle fire on an EV. There's no putting it out. You just got to let it burn, because underneath the chassis of the vehicle itself, there are roughly 10,000, believe it or not, 10,000 AA lithium batteries in that chassis. That's what's there. So, and even trying to proactively put it out, you stand a chance of multiple batteries exploding and causing physical harm. So, our response whenever we see an EV on fire is just let some bitch burn. Make sure people are safe.
You protect the surroundings as well. I've seen.
Yeah.
I have seen a bag that they're developing that it's a flame proof bag, and it's basically got like fire protection nozzles inside of it, and they cover it and they just flood it to contain it. But they're not going to save it or put it out. The only reason they throw that bag on there is because they're trying to protect what's around the vehicle from also catching fire. But there's not shit they can do. And I was just kind of taken back by that. I was like, well, I'm already not on the EV vehicle train, but now I'm definitely not. I was just kind of shocked to find out that a lot of those house fires were caused by EVs in the garage.
I haven't seen like anything from the storm. Like I swear,
dude, it's wild, man. You want to talk about shit that makes people stay where they are as well. There's I forget the website. I'm not going to plug them, but anyway, if you storm like live hurricane chasing, you'll find websites where there's multiple people in the area, like live, and they're where the eye is coming to landfall, and so that also gives people this false sense of security. Well, if they're out there in this shit, then I can be. And the problem with that is they don't talk to you about the planning that those people go through. They have, multiple exit strategies if they think water's getting too high. They pick structures that, they have structural engineers look at and review to advise them on whether they think that location is going to be safe where they are. It's not just idiots out there just recording it. Some people view them as that because it's a little crazy, right? But that gives people kind of this false sense of security that, if they did it, I could do it. Why can't I think of his name? Weather Channel guy. Fuck.
Only
Yeah, but Jim Cantor, and everywhere he goes, people are like, that's where the serious part of the storm is going to be, and so people will be like, he's coming here, I need to get out of here, and it has that effect on some people, and then other people are like, if they're going to be here, then I'll be perfectly fine here, and it's kind of a double-edged sword. But I would never gamble on weather.
Name.
You don't know any, not even local?
Never once. Never.
I told you I nerd out on that stuff. So it's very fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm sure it is. It's just I've never even thought of it. I remember I was one time I was at a donut coffee shop with a client, and we were sitting down and out in the Hamptons, and somebody walks in and he's like, "That's whatever her name is." I have no idea what her name was, and I'm like, and he looked at me like I was supposed to know who it is. I'm like, I have no freaking clue who that is. And he goes up to her and he wanted to take a picture with her. He brought his book. He went into his car and got his book and gave it to her. He's like, I want you to read this and this. And he's like taking pictures. And I'm like, all right, well, I don't know who you are, but I'm taking a picture with you too. So I have this picture. I think it's a weather person or a news person in the Hamptons. I have no idea.
So, was she hot?
she was an older lady, so maybe in the younger times, But it was I've never even thought of that before.
Well, to be truthful, like I don't actively watch like live weather right away, but I do remember having just like the mild little crushes, a TV crush or something like that. There was always that one hot weather girl, so that's why I asked. But no, so I just wanted to bring something up real quick. Nick, Nick with a C, you brought it up. We talk about trying to place blame on whether it be a federal or state agency, or as to lack of responses or lack of resources that are available. This is going to be borderline political, just in the sense that, firstly, when the hell are we ever intended, like, when have we ever been able just to 100% say, yes, we can undoubtedly rely on our government, state or federal? So I think the biggest thing to do is, if you are unhappy with the response, no matter where you're at in the world, and quit talking shit and try and do something about it. It could be something as simple as you reaching out to the actual areas that are affected, asking what is it that they need. Even if it's just something as simple as a $10 donation, or you getting them off your ass to go provide assistance. We can sit here and talk crap about the state and federal agencies' lack of response, or lack of resources. But shouldn't it actually fall on the people? We're in a very divided time, but it's those moments like that can bring some unity to it. So if we as men get up off our asses and try and help, no matter how big or small, I think we're doing something.
Well, that's what I was going to wrap up the episode. Thanks a lot. But I think that's an interesting point. And there's a woman in the chat that I'm in, and she went through some pretty rough shit and was basically asking everybody, for prayers. They had, I don't know, a dozen or so trees down. One fell on their house. The house was all fucked up and flooded. And she was asking people for prayers, and she was like, I don't know what we're going to do. And my response to her was to lean on your local community. Crazy, weird shit like this can bring a community together like it has not been brought together since the colonies were formed, right? This is shit like this is where you live or die as a community, right? If you can't be neighbors to each other and humans in such a trying situation, then I don't know any other time that would bring you together other than some tragic shit like this. So I think you're going to see those little mountain towns all throughout North Carolina and Tennessee. They're going to flourish through this. Once they get done assessing and people can get, their minds put back together and really wrap their heads around the situation, it's those little town communities that are going to be more, what's the word I'm looking for? They're going to sail through stuff like this, and they're going to come out stronger on the other side, and they're going to rebuild. Where you lose that is where you're in these bigger cities, and it's kind of a every man for himself mentality where people are busy fighting over what few resources are left in stores and what you can get, rather than checking on their neighbor or helping their neighbor. I can't stress enough. It's like you talked about being prepared, right? Like, I don't think people think about their communities like that when they buy a house. If some crazy wild shit hit the fan, is this the neighborhood I want to be in? Are these the kind of neighbors that I know are going to lend a hand and kind of help out if you need something? And I think that's a piece of the preparedness you talked about that sometimes people don't think about. Other things of preparedness, you can do the general stuff with your flashlights and batteries, a little med kit, non-perishable stuff. It never hurts to have that on hand. A case of water somewhere. I'm not saying you don't need to go like full prepper and have a whole storm cellar full of 10 years worth of supply of food. But you just never know, man. As people in North Carolina and Tennessee and South Carolina are finding out, it's you just never know when your card's going to get dealt and you're going to end up in a shitty situation like this. So even just a small bag of shit you can just grab and go. It doesn't have to be a hurricane. It doesn't have to be flooding. I mean, it could be a friggin' freak tornado. It could be a snowstorm to where you live in an area where it just doesn't happen, and all of a sudden everybody's got 2-wheel drive cars and can't go anywhere. You can't heat your home.
Through that.
Texas found that out the hard way.
Texas was a shit show.
Yeah, shit can happen. So just pack a little bag of some essential shit. I mean, that's all you got to do. So that was a fun episode, mainly because, like I told you guys, I kind of nerd out on weather.
I like the weather. Really, you're not expecting that one when we brought that up.
Yeah. No, we carried that a whole episode, and we were thinking we were going to need another couple of topics. But yeah, I think I can speak for everyone that our hearts go out to everybody affected by it. Wishing them the best of luck and kind of putting the pieces back together and getting back to a normal life whenever that may be. If you guys happen to be listening and you are in one of those areas, like I said, community is huge. Local resources, your local authorities and government hopefully have additional resources for you. There's plenty of dad groups if you just need some support. If you're just kind of lost and overwhelmed at the situation, we talked about that on the other episode we just recorded. But thank you guys. And again, that was a crazy freaking storm. And I think a lot of areas are going to learn a lot from it. And hopefully we see some more measures get put in place. So the scary part is the death toll for the storm. I think last I heard today was like 160 people. I don't know. I could not tell you the last hurricane that came through where the death toll was more than 20 people, 25, 30 people. So 160 people is a huge friggin' deal and a huge impact. So again, thoughts and prayers go out to everybody affected. If you're capable of, donating, volunteering your time somewhere that may have been affected, I'm sure everybody will appreciate it. But thanks for hanging out with us on Time to Dad. As always, check us out in the Facebook group, like and subscribe, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Good night, everybody.